Hello, my name is Taya Graham, and welcome to the Police Accountability Report. Now, this is a breaking news edition of the show. As we have learned, one of our viewers was seriously injured during an attempt to conduct an audit of a state agency. The injuries occurred when Blind Justice, an auditor, veteran, and advocate for the rights of others, was arrested while assessing the ability of a state agency to accommodate people with disabilities. But before we tell his story, let us restate ours. As I've said before, the show has a single purpose: holding police accountable. But to do so, we usually dig deep, unearthing and exposing the political economy, which makes cops almost untouchable. But before we go any further, I want you watching to know that if you have evidence of police misconduct or brutality, please share it with us and we might be able to investigate. Please reach out to us. You can email us tips privately at par@therealnews.com and share your evidence of police misconduct. You can also message us at Police Accountability Report on Facebook or Instagram, or at Eyes on Police on Twitter. And of course, you can message me directly at Taya's Baltimore on Twitter or Facebook. And please like and comment. I do read your comments and appreciate them. And please share the videos to help us get the word out. So what do these investigations entail? To be able to hold the untouchable accountable, it means that we have to expose the underlying imperative that makes policing profitable and turns those profits into political power. Let's remember that even in our poor city of Baltimore, policing operates with a blank check. How do I know? Well, just this past week, another Baltimore police officer was indicted for stealing money. The most recent offender is Officer Sergeant Robert Dehoney. A 27-year veteran was charged with stealing roughly 9 hours of overtime, but it was the way he gamed the system that was interesting. That's because Dehoney told prosecutors that he'd spent 9 hours monitoring inmate phone calls, turning in time slips to prove it. The only problem, his work was tracked electronically, so it would be easy to verify. And that's what happened. And when prosecutors did, they found he spent only an hour actually listening. The other 9 hours was simply fraud and led to charges of misconduct in office. And this is not the first case that illustrates just how over-empowered police are. Last year, another Baltimore police officer, Lieutenant Stephen Bagshaw, was caught red-handed, putting in for overtime for working in the city while he was over 3.5 hours away by car from his post. The fraud was so bad, investigators put a tracking device on his car and soon learned he was pretty much working from home. Home being the Eastern Shore of Maryland, where he was booking overtime at such a prodigious rate. Prosecutors counted dozens of instances where he was simply lounging around his house while billing the city nearly $100 per hour. And let's not forget, just recently, Baltimore Police Commissioner Michael Harrison made the unusual, and I'm putting this in quotes, change in policy that officers could not earn overtime when they were on sick leave, which prompted 25 officers to suddenly declare themselves fit for duty. Meanwhile, a taxpayer-funded audit, which could help shed light on the constant string of thefts, and yes, you heard me, stealing, has been kept secret. So, Stephen, what is this document? Why can't we see it? And most importantly, what can we do about it?
Well, this document was constructed in 2018 after a series of scandals, including the Gun Trace Task Force, came to light where overtime was just literally, they were bragging on wiretaps, these 8 officers. It was so easy, you didn't even have to show up. They filed overtime when they were on vacation in South Carolina.
Right.
So the city took taxpayer dollars and decided to do an audit, but then would refuse to release it, even though we asked dozens of times. Let's show you the video.
The internal controls are insufficient to ensure that overtime expenditures are necessary. It's undetermined whether the present internal controls can prevent waste, fraud, and abuse of overtime.
So even though we asked and filed an MPI request, they refused to release it because, look, wait for this, it was considered to be attorney-client work product related to a lawsuit by the FOP, the Baltimore Police Union, that said Baltimore police officers were underpaid, that they were literally not making enough money, even while they had overshot the overtime budget by $30 million. So far, this document remains completely secret.
Which brings me to our next guest, activist, auditor, and basic fighter for the preservation of constitutional rights, Blind Justice. We first spoke with Blind Justice last year after police in Aberdeen, Washington shot a homeless man, you're now seeing on the screen, who they said had a gun. Blind Justice was one of several activists who confronted police over this questionable shooting, a stance that cost him personally, as this veteran was harassed and almost arrested for protesting on the 4th of July. Last week, Blind Justice was in Guilford County, North Carolina, auditing the American with Disabilities Act, checking for compliance in a state office building. During his visit, Blind Justice was confronted by a security guard, a confrontation which turned violent. Let's watch.
And you're without permission, or you are asked to leave or told to leave and you refuse. Is that right? Is my understanding of that right?
Whatever it is you want to be.
Well, I just want to understand what you're threatening. Like, if
I'm
you're
not threatening you.
Nobody's
Are you gonna leave, sir?
Well, I'm trying to clarify.
Are you gonna leave, yes or no?
You've been
Absolutely,
asked to
yes,
leave.
I will absolutely leave.
Let's go.
I'm just
Okay.
trying to clarify
Because now I'm about
what's
to put
going
cuffs
on.
on you if you don't.
Wait a minute, so you are going to use violence against me? I'm trying to
That's
clarify.
not violent.
Like, taking away my freedom is absolutely violent.
Sir, are you gonna leave right now or not?
Whoa, stop, what are you doing? Who are you? Stop, who are you? Stop, who are you? Stop, who are you? Stop, who are you? I don't know who you are, stop, this is assault and battery. Stop,
This is
help,
not
help,
assault and
help, somebody help me.
You have
Stop,
been asked to leave.
stop, ow, you're hurting me. Stop, why are you doing this? Ah! What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Roll over now.
Who are you?
Roll
Who are you?
And now, joining us via Skype is Blind Justice. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Taya, Stephen, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, first, tell us where you were and what you were auditing at that moment.
Well, I've been investigating Guilford County as a relator. It's under the False Claim Act. There's provision, I think it's called the QUETAM provision of the False Claim Act.
Mm-hmm.
So your segment prior to introducing me is talking about fraud, waste, and abuse. And that's what the False Claim Act is also covering. So the county has been reporting to the federal government that they've been in compliance with federal law, particularly the Americans with the Disabilities Act, or the ADA. And as I've been going to county buildings, I've been finding numerous ADA violations and bringing it to their attention. Some places I go, they recognize that, they rectify it, they put people to work to come into compliance. But Guilford County has doubled down at every turn until this last week, where they wanted to take it an extra step and cause bodily injury.
Now, the American with Disabilities Act is very important to you. I think it's really personal for you. May I ask you about what disabilities you have?
Yeah, so I have multiple brain injuries, and with that, there's the loss of vision. I have insomnia and long-term memory loss, chronic debilitating migraines that leave me unable to move or talk. Different injuries to neck and other joints like the knees and back. So
I also know that you've suffered from post-traumatic stress. So I feel like the violence that you suffered makes this so much worse, knowing that you're a veteran with disabilities. Why do you think the security guard escalated this situation?
It's a good question. Some of the viewers pointed out that it was the same guy in a different visit I had at a county building, I believe at the courthouse right across the courtyard, and that in previous visits he's shown aggression and creeped up behind me, put gloves on. So I don't know if he has a personal vendetta or if he just decided that was the day he wanted to try to teach me a lesson. I don't know.
Well, just why do you continue to do this? Because it seems like the government is pushing back quite hard and putting you at personal risk. Why do you continue to audit these agencies to sort of monitor their compliance?
Yeah, so to clarify, I've never identified myself as an auditor. Some people like to attribute that title. I do believe it's important to hold the government accountable, especially since they're funded with theft. They steal from the people, and the people don't really get a say in what they do with the money, as you guys have pointed out in this segment. And then they even steal within what they're reporting they're allowed to take. So I check up on particularly the disability side of things, making sure that everyone has equal access. And if they're willing to violate access and freedom and rights of people with disabilities, then of course they're going to do it to the entire populace.
You're quite right. And I wanted to ask you, the injuries that we saw, I saw a picture of you in the hospital. Can you talk about some of the injuries you sustained as a result of this encounter with the security guard?
Yeah, so I came to in the ER and was disoriented, didn't know where I was or what day or what time it was, and wasn't able to hardly move or vocalize. I was able to scribble down some words to communicate to the staff, They found out I was blind. I had a history of brain injury. I was there because I was attacked and had a lot of pain in my head and neck. So they rushed me to get a CT scan that showed there was bleeding on the brain. And then they transferred me to a larger hospital, trauma hospital, with a bigger neurology department. They did other brain scans to verify that. And then they took some x-rays of the extremities. And the main concern was the brain damage, especially with the history. And I mean, there's abrasions up and down my arms and legs, and some bruises on my chest, and some muscle soreness, maybe some bone bruising. But the primary concern, again, was the brain damage.
So did they charge you with anything? Because Tay and I wanted to talk to them about the charges if you want and follow up on it. But did they end up, actually after injuring you this grievously, did they end up charging you with any crime? Are you facing any charges?
So the day after, a handful of fellow freedom lovers went out to that courthouse adjacent to the health department where they attacked me, and they put a records request in. They got from the clerk, and they told me that there's 2 charges, one being second-degree trespass and the other resisting an officer.
And this is from which police department is this from?
The guy that enacted the arrest is A. Boyce Jr. He works for North State Security Company. It's a private police company.
So it was a private police officer that initiated this brutal arrest.
Yeah, the county hires from that company, so they have basically security guards with police powers that go through the same academy, and I think they get hired out from different people. It's not just with municipalities or county governments. It could be private companies, I believe, can hire them as security as well.
Now, I know you don't consider yourself an auditor, but it seems like more and more Americans like you are stepping up and coming out to government agencies, government buildings, and basically making sure that government officials, as well as police officers, are actually adhering to the Constitution, that their amendments are actually being protected. Why do you think so many citizens are going out and taking this into their own hands, like you? Why do you think so many people are starting to go out into the world and say, I demand to have my rights respected, and they're bringing their cameras with them? Why do you think this is happening?
Back when the founding fathers were trying to wrestle with the idea of forming a government, forming a federal government at that, I think it was James Madison that wrote about this a lot, spoke about it a lot, called the Constitution a parchment barrier. It's just a piece of paper, that you're expecting to defend you. And I think people are waking up to that same idea. Like it's just words on a page, even though they may be, some of the words may be very inspirational and very true. But I think people are realizing that nobody's going to uphold and defend it, even though we swore oaths to it. If you're in the military or in law enforcement, or basically any officer, it doesn't matter which branch. If you're an officer of the judicial, executive, or legislative branch, you swear an oath to the Constitution. But that oath is pretty much worthless as the words on a page. Nobody's going to actually defend it until they understand it, until they go and try to live it. And I think people are recognizing this because of this age of technology and being able to spread things online. People can see it. You can watch all day, every day. You can watch people that swore an oath to the Constitution violate it and hurt people. And I think that's this. If you're a freedom lover, it burns inside of you, burns in your bones, like something that says, it cries out for freedom. And you got to do what you can. And sometimes that's just going out and recording what it is, like what is the situation. Sometimes they're nice and pleasant, have a smile on their face while they take your money at the tax office, right? While they take from you your hard-earned money, or say that you have a piece of property that you paid off, but you still have to pay rent to the government to live there, and it's just it's unconscionable that people think that that's how it's supposed to be, that's how it's always been, and it's not how it's always been. It's just. The beginning of this country was over nothing more than a 3% tax, and
Right.
taxation without representation.
What you said was so powerful when you said that the need for freedom burns in your bones. And I was thinking about what you're saying, that it only took 3% of the population to be able to create an American revolution. And so maybe that can give some hope to some of the people out there who are trying to hold these government and city agencies accountable, that it doesn't have to be all of us, just a concerned group that can make some positive change. I think it's clear, either in the way our city hides thievery from the public or the manner in which the Guilford County government is willing to use violence to prevent an innocent attempt to ensure they comply with critical federal standards. It shows something is seriously wrong. But what does this mean? What does it say about the aforementioned political economy that fuels the power of both policing and governance? And what can we do about it? Well, the first thing that has to happen is we have to stop making law enforcement profitable. I mean, think about it. We have people who are tasked with enforcing the law stealing, not just adding an hour here or there, but wholesale, in-your-face fraud. What does that tell you about the culture of being a cop? What does that say about the power of having a badge that you can brazenly steal and not worry about being caught? And why do auditors, like Blind Justice and Otto the Watchdog, encounter so much resistance for simply exercising their First Amendment rights? It makes you wonder about the true imperative of governance when simply seeking accountability becomes an act that must be met with violence. But maybe that's the point, that any sort of scrutiny reveals just how unjust our justice system is, that pointing a camera will show not just the naked incompetence, but the greed at the heart of the system, greed that has turned our cops and courts into an assembly line that manufactures despair. I want to thank my guest, Blind Justice, for his time and for sharing his journey fighting for accountability. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to thank my colleague, Stephen Janis, for his invaluable reporting and writing. And I would like to thank Noli D for her help as always. Thanks, Noli. And I want to wish the very best to Otto the Watchdog as well. And I want to say hi to our viewer in Baltimore, Lonnie, who we met this weekend. Hi, Lonnie. Thanks for watching. And I don't want you to forget that if you have evidence of police misconduct, please email it to us privately at par@therealnews.com. Please like and share and comment on our video. You know I do read your comments and appreciate them. My name is Taya Graham, and I want to thank you for watching the Police Accountability Report. Please be safe out there.